Welcome to My View from the Piano Bench. We do this every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel, formerly streamed on my Facebook page as Inside the Process. And before that, Pandemic Piano on the Mainstay Facebook page. So I've been doing this for a while, really since the pandemic began, and I'm planning to continue doing it. Thank you for your support and encouragement that allows me to. You'll see the link in the description to the support page of my website if you're so inclined to check that out. Different options, and the Patreon is one I ask you to just look at if you go there. It's a little unique and low maintenance take on it. So again, thank you to all of you who support and encourage me. It's a ridiculous business. And that's not why we do it. Yeah. But that's a whole nother thing. And actually, there are so many of these things, other things and things. And they're essentially conceptual things and kind of places that I'll float in and look over and talk about in this series. But I'm realizing now as I start that that's kind of what this is about. The topic that I deliberated a little bit this morning about what it should be called, and I've landed on attentiveness deficit. I've talked about this before. I could really say a lot about it from my own experience. And I could probably also say things that not everyone would agree with. And that gives me pause. Not that I want everybody to agree with me, but I want to speak thoughtfully in a way that, a listener who is thoughtful will, understand. And actually, hopefully in a way that a non-thoughtful listener might be compelled to be thoughtful. I'm all full of thoughts today. So, to set this up, I have a long history, as many of you know, with the Mediri brothers and their band. Started with them, actually, we kind of taught each other the plays because they started with them in high school, and not just started in terms of gigging, but started in terms of exploring and discovery. And I've been in and out of their band for, going on 50 years. Of course, their band was our band when we were in high school and put Little Trio together as our first musical group. And long-term relationships, going home, that's another topic. And if I don't have my pencil with me, lately I've been just coming up with topics while I'm recording and writing them down. But that's a huge thing, going home, knowing where home is, knowing who you are and your history and all that. But in this context, I'm talking about just the long-standing relationships that have been formed. Not just with the brothers, Joe and Paul, but with band members that I've played with, even if not regularly, constantly, on and off, in the band for a while, out of the band for a while, but, decades-long relationships with musicians like Pat Mercury and Jimmy Lawler. And it's Jimmy who I'm going to focus on. And I could talk a lot about him. I'm writing him down. Jimmy, He's Stepping Out. For those of you who are aware of my He's Stepping Out project, Jimmy is the comic actor in there. And he is a very gifted comedian. He doesn't do that in real life, but he could. He's totally capable. But he's a drummer in the Mediri band. So after an absence for a long while from the band, I've been kind of gradually coming back in. And we had a concert a couple weeks ago at Salem County Community College. And I posted Surrey with the Fringe on top, which was my solo feature. I posted it both here on this YouTube channel and on my Facebook page. I had taken my phone, actually the phone that I'm looking at and talking to, but I have another one here, and I just set it up, here at the end. I turned it around, of course. And I'll probably be doing a little more of that, and it's a way to grab video without imposing on other band members, which is an interesting thing that I encountered before, like years ago when I first started YouTube posting. It was just like crazy, taking videos of everything. And not all musicians appreciate it. And so this allows me to just record the piano, but I turn it around so I can't look at it while I'm recording, which musicians will do, particularly when they're streaming. But of course that reverses the, the left hand becomes the right and all of that. So you're looking at it normally. And I happened to get a decent solo feature that I liked. It was well received. It's nice to post a video that there's a good crowd response, and actually the whole concert kind of came out, even though all you can see is Joe Mediri kind of perfectly placed in there. But I doubt I'm going to post anything else that I've already posted of this. But the solo feature, hey, let's do it. And Jimmy and I got talking afterward. Actually, Jimmy started talking. And no, we were talking, but he initiated the conversation. And his take on my playing is that it engages him because he never knows where it's going to go, and it always seems like I'm boxing myself in the corner, but I never do. So how do I do this thing that seems like I'm just, going to spin out of control, but then it weaves into this and it weaves into that. And I remember him saying that to me before. We haven't had many conversations lately, which is kind of the point about me not being in the band for a while. And now that he's brought it up again, I do remember that, and it's a very, deep and appreciated compliment that I get from him. But he is very engaged. And then he reminded me of something, of a solo set I did at the Sun Valley, now it's called Jazz and Music Festival. Back when I was with the band before, this was 2007. And I documented it with my camera, in that case, camcorder, right, back then. But because of how it was set up, I actually set it on a table in another room. So you hear all sorts of noise, people walk in front of it, and I'm way off in the distance, but I just wanted to document it. That was my thing at the time. And still pretty much is, but these days you're more attentive to having to have quality video. At that point, it was just any video at all was just documentation, right? And so I recorded that solo set, and he was there. He reminded me he was there, and he described things in like detail. And it's like, I don't remember. Yeah, okay, I do. And one of the things was at the end, it started snowing. This is in October. These jazz festivals, some of them anyway, were held at ski resorts in the off season, right? But in October, it's kind of borderline, the end of off season, but they're still not having skiing, but you get a little snow. And I looked at that video and I remembered what happened. Well, I looked at the two tunes I posted, T for Two and Bye Bye Blackbird, right? And if you look for them, if you search them on YouTube, they're the ones that I put a 2 after. for reasons I'll explain later. But T for 2 / 2 by my Blackbird / 2. Right? And at the end, it starts to snow. And Jimmy recalled that. It's like, yeah, I do remember that. But Jimmy was just recalling how he was mesmerized by that set. Right? Now, let's see. I don't want to... Okay, I'm going to stop the story there, and I'm going to play the tune that I'm referencing, and it's one where if you watch the last 10 seconds of the video, you'll hear Jimmy, who happened to be sitting by the camera, probably he didn't know, laughing because of something I said, and yeah, we'll stop there. And I'm already all convoluted with my notes, but that happens all the time. And now why did I write that? I don't know. But let me play the tune. But I'm also going to hopefully, that's why I wrote remember, because I want to remember to put the link in the description of this video to a very poor video quality recording from Sun Valley in 2007. And then you will hear Jimmy laughing the last 10 seconds of the clip because of something I said. But yeah, in fact, I'm all over the place now, which is actually appropriate for this discussion. So let me play a little T for 2, just because I should play something probably. And I will play it in the manner that I would play T for 2 at the time, because which I was reminded by when I looked at it. There it is. Oh my goodness. Well, as I was playing it, I'm looking up and realizing that I completely blew by the first tune that I intended to play, which was Sorry with the Fringe on Top, referencing what I did. So I may come back to that and reprise it, but I don't think I want to go back and try to talk about what I talked about before. But I did leave some things kind of out. So when Jimmy was talking about Sorry with the Fringe on Top, commenting at the time, before, and I went ahead and come home and looked at the old video from Sun Valley, which he was recalling. He was talking about how my mind just kind of goes, right? And I said it to get a laugh, right? And I said it actually in front of other people, and Pat Mercury laughed, and I was happy. He said, "It's not a good life skill," which is actually a complicated statement, but I knew it would be understood because it kind of broadly sweeping references the idea of ADD. Okay? The idea of, like, your attention just, shiny, rabbit, kind of thing. And, there are rabbit holes all over my landscape. They're kind of like landmines, but, I don't get blown up. I just sort of like get stuck for a while when I fall in. And I do tend to go down rabbit holes. And I mean, this is a rabbit hole fest here. Well, everything is, but I usually guard against it and make things not. This is that. I'm going to try to stare down them rather than go down them. The idea of ADD is actually something that is really big in my view, from personal experience and from kind of philosophical, might be the wrong word, but conceptual framing of the whole issue and what it means to be creative. Yeah, one who can call himself diagnosed ADD. I did it as an adult. There was no ADD diagnosis when I was a kid. The diagnosis that I received in the 1960s was, "Hey, you settle down." And I had this whole shtick about ADD that I will do in certain circumstances. But when I need to really like turn on the kind of entertainment juice, when I would go into the American Cruise Lines, which I've decided I'm not going to go back to. It stopped for COVID, and there are reasons I'm deciding not to. But I did it from 2009 to essentially 2020. And you would go in and have a completely different crowd every time, and you had to win them over. And it wasn't going to be just with playing. There was an entertainment portion to it. So I had this whole thing I developed around ADD, but I've always had that, and I've always used the term ADD before I even would consider, do I have ADD? And let me see here. I'm reading my notes, and what I wrote, and I'm just so off script. Oh, did I mention ADD? So at the end of the video of T for 2, that's the whole point of this, right? The end of the video of T for 2, which I hopefully will remember to put in the description. Yell at me if I forgot. But you can search it, and it's the T for 2/2 on this YouTube channel. At the end of me playing T for 2 is when it starts to snow out a big picture window that I was in front of, which is why the video was all washed out, because I was shooting into the daytime picture window. I guess it was sunny when it started, but it started snowing at the very end. So I'm coming out of T for 2 and I'm looking out the window, right? And I'm starting to just quote Christmas tunes, you know, stuff like that. And it was just, me being me, and it was cute and funny. And then I said, oh, sorry about me getting distracted. It's the ADD. And then I went back to my little thing. And Jimmy's, laughs for the last 10 seconds of the video. He thought that was amusing for some reason. Right? And that kind of brings up the whole ADD thing. And how I address it constantly without saying it is to talk about I'm thinking the word remedy was the wrong word, but how I approach this, which is wide angle lens. And I had to realize at some point, and you've heard me say this, if you've heard me say anything, I realized I only have a wide angle lens. And so I navigate things by using a wide angle lens. I'm going to go so off script, and I'm just looking. Okay, I'll hopefully be able to wind it back. The wide angle lens, like living out of the intuitive space more than living out of like the thoughts I hold on to, which is very hard for me to do. And I really feel that that's how I'm supposed to go. And it's the path for me because that's who I am. As opposed to looking at it as a problem that needs to be fixed. And the problem needing to be fixed allows for the word disorder. Now, I understand why it's called attention deficit disorder. And notice that I changed it in the title to attentiveness deficit, which is what I seek to overcome. The attention deficit, the thing that, shiny, shiny, shiny is all around all the time, doesn't mean I can't focus on tasks. It means that I am being led to them and working with them as they are in front of me, and basically just multitasking, which I never thought of it. And hopefully I look at this video so I remember I said this. I think my solos, and I tried to be a little silly, not silly, but demonstrate what I was talking about and how I play T for 2, which is always a problematic, or can be, when I do something on purpose rather than allow it to happen. But I multitasking might be a good description of how I approach soloing, because a bunch of things are happening at once. In fact, I'm writing that down. Multitasking in soloing, and I'll develop that theme. But yeah, that's a good description. As you probably are hearing the farm equipment, that's pretty loud, because there was actually I live next to a farm, but there was a rezoning, little property redistribution stuff, and so the border of the farm is now even closer to my front here, and so they're out there doing their stuff. It beats city noises, though. I have no idea what I was talking about, but that's good. You get to see this is like how I solo, right? So let's bring this back together. The attention deficit disorder thing. It's coming from the idea that the people who are the linear black and white focused people. This is much more complex than I'm going to say, but those people are writing the books, right? Those people are making the terminology. I'm going to jump ahead of myself, and I'm going to say, if I said that like certain people who were just like very linear focused people get lots of things done, task oriented. What if I were to say that there's a creativity deficit disorder? Just the other side of the street. If my side of the street was writing the medical books, right? But of course, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous in a way, but hopefully makes a point. So I don't like to call it a disorder. It's something to manage. Is it something to fix, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about. And I've actually had to learn over the course of my life that fixing that medically, which I can't do now anyway, I have a physical reason why I couldn't take that medication if I wanted to now. But fixing that medically breaks this, right? So, and I guess me being so focused on making who I am work, brings me to a deeper understanding and more of an appreciation of the idea that that's what every one of us has to do, make ourselves work. Don't fix ourselves necessarily. Manage ourselves for sure. And it's much more about management than about fixing ultimately, because fixing means that you're trying to meet a standard that you might not be equipped to meet, but you may well be able to manage who you are to navigate appropriately in whatever realm that may be challenging to you, while not restricting you from really excelling over here, whatever in the heck that all just meant. But I'm gonna hope and possibly suspect that it made sense. My kids, my 3 kids, very, very, very different people. But I've had an appreciation from, for their whole lives, that the most important thing for them is to grow up being who they are. And for me, that would mean sometimes resisting influences coming to them that would say, you have to go in this mold, you have to do this is the way it's done. No. You have to take your unique path, whether it's a straight line or more likely a really winding road that seems to have some unnecessary twists and turns, but really they're not necessary. You have to learn, right? And when we get to later in life, and of course, those of us, most of us who are all here, are later in life at this point, this becomes more and more in view. When you get to the later in life, you know what? I'm not even going to finish that sentence because you can finish it, and there's different ways to finish it, right? But we're assessing now. We're seeing through a different set of lenses, kind of, than we did when we were kids, right? And being successful at adulting, as an adult, being who you are was my goal as a parent for my kids. And I'm very proud of them because they're all doing that and they're all so different. And I hope I'm doing that too. And I hope that this kind of, concept is meaningful to you. So I'm going to now read what I wrote here. When I say wide-angle lens, this is my response to a long journey of managing life with what is termed attention deficit disorder. But what I don't see is a deficit, a challenge for sure. The glass half full, half empty analogy applies here. Because what is a deficit is also a strength. As I've hopefully illustrated or talked about, that we say disorder is troubling. I get why it's said as a disorder, which is another rabbit hole I don't want to go down. And this is where I wrote down. You wouldn't want to say creativity deficit disorder. Ultimately, we all have to be ourselves. We all have to be our own normal. So, let's play a tune. The glass half full, the glass half empty thing, right? You embrace what is good, right? And what is good is, there's universal good, right? But there's also contextual good, right? How good can happen? What is good for me, right? And what is good for me is to be in that conceptual space, that I can be attentive to it, that I can be who I am. Really, really difficult to do that while I'm, let's say, managing a checkbook, okay? But I also know that my life's work is not to be an accountant, a different skill set, right? Or not to be a bookkeeper, right? So we look at that glass half empty, glass half full, and you know what? I gotta write down here. Did I mention ADD? Dave McKenna documentary. If you're following my Facebook page, I made a post about that, and I have to talk about that documentary that just came out. It's only available on Quest TV because Dave McKenna really closed himself up, and I know other musicians who do this, and I'm sure I've done this to myself, by looking at the half empty part of the glass and then kind of manifesting that as your reality, because that's where you dwell. And the idea of looking at the glass half full is that you are putting yourself in that energy space, right? And you're running with what's there. You're focused on what exists. You're focusing on what is good. You're not focusing on what is missing or what is wrong or what is bad. And that is, talk about forks in the road. That's the big fork in the road of life, right? So the Johnny Mercer tune, which almost quotes a Bible verse, you got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. Oh, there's so much truth and wisdom and power in that, isn't there? was all over the place, not in my best way, but it's okay. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, latch on to the affirmative, and be grateful for everything, which I talked about before. So, historically, my solo shows, I would make light of ADD and started doing something decades ago that I called the Add Improvisation. And it was before I ever considered that I would have a diagnosis of ADD. I was just making light and making fun. It's something that I don't do now or do very seldom because I realize, and I've tried it recently and it's not really working anymore. It requires me to really like mentally try to focus and grab and take the spinning plates thing and throw them around. But in order to be in this creative space, I have to not do that. I have to actually detach myself from all of that to find the bigger thing. It's like when you see, this is the bottom line, maybe too esoteric, but when you can look over the big landscape all at once, all of the detail in that landscape is available to you. Not necessarily to focus on, or certainly not to focus on to the exclusion of the landscape, but to move around within that landscape. Any nuance of detail is there, but not in the manner that you have to like only see the nuance of detail with blinders, which is the other side of the street, right? And when you're looking at the detail with a microscope, you just can't throw away the microscope and pull out the telescope and see the big picture again when you're in progress with it. So it's really disruptive now, as I understand this place I need to be to perform effectively, for me to make myself think that way. But the Add Improvisation that I used to do, and there are numerous examples on YouTube. You can just search my name, Add Improv, is where I would take 5 unrelated tunes, 4 or 5. I'd have cards, and I'd have different categories of tunes, and I'd let people pick or just give me tunes as long as I knew them. And then I would kind of do the mashup, but I would do it where they would just all be crashing into each other, kind of playing the tunes at the same time, kind of. The Add Improv was one way I made light of it, and the current way I'm making light of it now is I finally can almost play the minute waltz clean enough, and remember what it is. Right? Is to have this sort of Victor Borger shtick where and you can see a YouTube post from the recent Mainstay concert, I forget what I'm doing and that kind of stuff. But my long-standing ADD shtick tunes, without saying ADD, would be like The Entertainer and the Maple Leaf Rag. And actually, I've written down here to play The Entertainer. Well, you know what? I'm going to do that. There are numerous examples of me doing it on YouTube. And I think one of the first times, perhaps, I realized that I could... No, not the first time. But how I presented it once, it's called Attempting the Entertainer. And what I used to say is, I'm going to try to play this straight, just the way it's written, but I sometimes have trouble. That's how I would set it up. I don't set it up like that way anymore. You know what? I'm going to play the Maple Leaf Rag instead. Just the A and D sections. Did I mention ADD? as I'm playing that, I'm realizing that there might not be a whole lot of difference between how I approach that and how I approach the other things I played today, because I was like pushing myself into that space. I wasn't really trying to be serious. And well, I don't know what that means, what I just said, but I think you'll get it. And so the shtick thing means that there are a couple of like go-to quotes that are just blatantly silly that I'm going to throw in. Not that I know when, but just they're just sort of like, on the shelf for me to pull off and put back, kind of. And typically when I'm more serious, those things show up when they show up. I don't call them over and say, "Hey, come over here," And then they show up more subtly, often, instead of just the like that. And I'm actually answering somebody's question without defining the question or changing the subject. So if you're watching this, who asked the question, you'll, I think, pick this up. So when I am looking surprised at what happens, it's because I am, right? Because I'm allowing it to happen, all right? If I'm in shtick land, right, then I'm going to be a little more overt with it, and I'm going to play a little longer, right? And I'm going to draw attention to it. And it is possible, but it's not usual, but I mean, I could, if I'm really in shtick land, right, do something on purpose and I'm like, oh, what have I done? Kind of thing. But obviously that's shtick. But most of what I do is not contrived. Hopefully all of it, but there's a certain showmanship element, but most of the vast majority of what you get out of me is just organic. And I allow myself to be in that place, right? To be in that receptive place. And it's like, oh, yeah, really? And of course, I'm aware. Am I going to do that when nobody's here and nobody's watching, or I'm playing, don't have an audience? Probably not. So there's an awareness that you have an audience. But typically, there's not a contrivance in my playing. One of my fun little story, or favorite little recollections, I should say, not really a story, of the awareness of what I'm doing and how it becomes like entertaining. I won't say shtick, entertaining on stage, right? Was back when I was doing the festivals with the Madiri Band, back around the time of the Sun Valley video. And I don't know, this could happen at Sun Valley, could happen at Mammoth probably. But there's like a lot of big tents and bands are under different tents. And so we were under this tent, and we were playing this, up-tempo, hard swing tune. And I'm soloing, and a quote starts. It's involuntary. I let it happen. But then I said really loud, which was organic, but was also with an awareness that I was on stage. Okay, so there's the balance there. I said really loud, "Oh no!" And you could probably hear me say it in the next 10. I was looking over, because like in the middle of whatever hard swinging tune, this one, I quoted. Like part of the bridge, so the carpenter's close to you, right? And then, and the on stage thing, becomes, everyone in the band starts eye rolling and, oh, Joe, and then Paul shouts, 4 quotes make a gallon, and, all this stuff. So there's the entertainment thing. But the fact the fact that the bridge to close to you happened at an inappropriate time was totally involuntary. My saying "oh no" was organic in the sense that I was legitimately reacting as like, what have I done now? But then I guess there was a little bit of a decision at that point to allow that to become part of the entertainment of it. And if I were a more serious thing, I probably would have, like, once I was like, aware of what was going on, I probably would have allowed it to steer itself someplace else rather than exploiting it, right? But I want to make the point that those things that happen are not contrived. Sometimes what I do with them could be, and it's related to what I would say to the kids in Washington College Jazz Combo, particularly one who I won't say, well, shtick was his thing. He had his cute things he would do, and I would encourage him. And it's like, really, you're encouraging this? And I would say, shtick is fine as long as it's delivering substance, right? So you like Victor Borge, perfect example, because underneath of what Victor Borge was doing was a very deep, very beautiful pianist. That man could play, right? And there was always that substance and depth of knowledge, depth of musicianship underneath of what he did, which is what made it so special. Even when he would stand up and have his little, lines that had nothing to do with the piano, there was still this undercurrent of substance, and that's what I seek to do. All right, so I think I don't have to go back and play Sorry with the Fringe on Top, because I talked my way out of having that time, which I actually tried to do, or figured I would attempt. So I'm going to play one more tune, because I was just thinking about, that whole esoteric, space, and I thought of the tune "The Sounds of Music," which is a tune I play, but not one I've actually really, that I feel I figured out things to do with. But and I thought of a line: "My heart wants to sing every sound it hears." It's that, and now so I looked at the lyrics of the tune, and the tune is talking about physical sounds, right? But that line, "My heart wants to sing every song or sound or song it hears," right? What the heart hears is different than this. What the heart hears includes this. But that's your big picture, right? That's your landscape. That's your wide angle lens, right? And that's where I seek to be. And what I seek to be attentive to. And I did need to tie this together, right? Because for me, a deficit, and I almost forgot to tie it together, a deficit of attentiveness to that landscape is my biggest roadblock, and what will cause a deficit in the abilities that I have. And I guess that becomes my disorder. That becomes my thing to fix. My thing to fix, okay? Because my normal, right, is that. Now, does that change that, I will still have trouble balancing my checkbook and that kind of thing? And yeah, I mean, there are challenges, but the point here is, and I hope I made clear, that it's about managing, not fixing something to break something. A good example of that, I'm going to talk my way out of playing something here, but a good example of like breaking something to fix something, unintended consequences, is the invention of the piano. idea is to create an instrument at the time that could play soft and loud and, express itself. In order to do so, you invent a percussion instrument, right? And now, every note you play in the piano has this thud, as opposed to like the smoothness of a violin or a slur on a trombone or the human voice. There's no thuds in there. But everything you play in the piano, even if it's flowing, right, there's a thud. Now, all kind of thuds there, right? And so that becomes, that's like something that got broken in a way because you fixed something else. So looking at managing rather than fixing and declaring things good or bad. I'm going to shut up. And I hope this made sense. This is also at a time of day I don't usually record, and I'm a little more this way, this time of day, which is actually probably good, but I'll just play one chorus. So thank you for being here. Join me tomorrow night for Piano for My Friends, when, thankfully, I will keep my mouth shut. See you soon.